Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 9 college football predictions. So last week in Week 8, I had a record of 15 and 5, and that brings my record on the season to 120 and 30. But kicking things off this week with UCLA at Indiana. So Indiana, they're one of the best teams in the country, as they're 7-0 and one of 6 remaining undefeated teams. But then I face a UCLA team that's been playing pretty well, as they've won 3 games in a row after their 0-4 start. And a big part of the turnaround for UCLA has been their offense, as on their 3-game win streak, they're scoring 33 points per game, as opposed to scoring just 14 points per game in their first 4 games. But while the UCLA offense has been better recently, they now face a really good defense, as Indiana is actually 4th best in the country, allowing just 11.6 points per game. And on the flip side, Indiana is also quite good, as they're also 4th nationally, scoring 43.9 points a game. And they face a UCLA defense that isn't great, although, like the offense, they have been a little bit better as of late. But I'm going to take Indiana to get the win here. It's been a fun Cinderella run for UCLA, but I think that comes to an end here. Indiana, they're just too good, too complete of a team, plus they're at home. I've got Indiana with the win, 37-17. Next game, we have Georgia Tech hosting Syracuse. So Georgia Tech, they've continued to play well, and they're another undefeated team, as they're 7-0. And they're in a pretty good spot in terms of the college ball playoff race, because they don't have that hard of a schedule remaining. And then they'll face a Syracuse team that's 3-4. And Syracuse, they started off playing pretty well, as they were 3-1. But then quarterback Steve Angeli tore his Achilles, and without him, they've been terrible. As since Steve Angeli got hurt, they're 0-3, and their offense is averaging just 11 points per game. And I think the Syracuse offense is going to continue to struggle this week, because this is a very good Georgia Tech defense, giving up just about 20 points per game. And on the flip side, Georgia Tech's offense is also good, scoring 35 points per game, and they're obviously led by a great run game with 225 rushing yards per game. And they face a bad Syracuse defense that is allowing about 30 points a game and 151 rush yards per game. But I don't really think this game is that close. I think Georgia Tech, they dominate both sides of the ball, and I've got Georgia Tech winning very easily, 34-9. Up next, we have Ole Miss at Oklahoma. This is a huge game. Both these teams are quite good, as they're 6-1, although both teams really need to avoid that second loss at this point in the season. But for Ole Miss, they lost their first game of the season last week, as they lost to Georgia in a shootout. And Oklahoma, they get a nice bounce back win last week, as they dominated South Carolina after their loss to Texas 2 weeks ago. But this game should be pretty good. And in this game, we have a great matchup, as we have a great Ole Miss offense against a great Oklahoma defense. As offensively for Ole Miss, they're scoring 37 points per game, and they're averaging over 300 passing yards per game. But they face an Oklahoma defense that is one of the best defenses in the country, as they're allowing just 9.4 points per game and 132 passing yards per game. Both those stats are top 5 nationally. Then on the flip side, the Oklahoma offense has also been pretty good, as they're scoring 28.7 points per game, although they haven't been quite as good recently, just 26 points last week and 6 the week before. Although I do think the Oklahoma offense will continue to improve, especially as John Mateer gets closer to 100%. But the Oklahoma offense, they face an Ole Miss defense that isn't amazing, and they were non-existent last week, allowing 45 points against Georgia. And on the season, they've been okay, allowing 22.6 points per game, but this definitely isn't any weak defense. But this is a really interesting game, and a game I can definitely see going either way. And I have no idea who to take in this game. My gut tells me Ole Miss, but I kind of like the match for Oklahoma. I think their defense is good enough to contain this good offense. I think their offense can do enough against a defense that isn't amazing. Plus, Oklahoma's at home, so I am going to take them, but this game can definitely go either way. I'm not very confident with this pick, but I've got Oklahoma in a close game, 27-24. Up next, we have Virginia at North Carolina. So Virginia, they've been great so far this year, and they've been one of the most surprising teams as they're 6-1. And North Carolina, they have not been good in year 1 of the Bill Belichick era, as they're 2-4. But I don't really think this game is going to be that good. The offense for Virginia has been great, putting up 40 points a game, and I think that's going to continue against North Carolina defense, allowing 25 points a game. Although the Virginia defense isn't great either, as they're allowing about 23.3 points a game, but I just don't think North Carolina's got the offense to keep up in this game, as they're scoring just 18.7 points a game, which is third worst among power conference teams. But I don't really think this game is that close. I think this game is higher scoring, but North Carolina definitely doesn't have the offense to keep up, and I've got Virginia with the win pretty easily, 41-18. Up next, we have South Florida at Memphis. So this is a big game for the Group of 5 playoff race and the American Conference. And South Florida, they're 6-1 and playing really well. And Memphis is also 6-1, although they lost their first game of the season last week, losing to a bad UAB team. And in that loss for Memphis, quarterback Brendan Lewis also got hurt, and he might not play this week. And if he doesn't play, that is going to be a major loss for this Memphis offense, who really relies on him, especially with what he can do as a runner, as he's second on the team with 440 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns so far this year. But the offense for Memphis, they face a pretty good South Florida defense that is allowing 23 points per game, and they're also good against the run. And that is not necessarily a great matchup for Memphis because running the ball is exactly what they want to do on the offensive side of the ball. And then on the offensive side for South Florida, they've been playing well. They're scoring 41.7 points per game, and they've got a great run game and a great pass game. But they face a good Memphis defense that has played pretty well to this point in the season, as they're giving up just 18.3 points per game, and they are pretty good at stopping the run, although their pass defense isn't the greatest. But this is a game that I definitely think could be pretty good. Well, I'm going to take South Florida to get the win here. I just think they're the better overall team. I think their offense is good enough to score even against a tough defense, and I don't really trust this offense for Memphis, especially with the injury to Brendan Lewis. So I'm going to take South Florida to get the win, fairly convincingly 34-17, but this game could go either way, but I got South Florida getting a big win. Up next, we have Alabama at South Carolina. So Alabama, they've been playing really well lately, winning 6 in a row, and their last 4 wins have all come against ranked teams. And they don't face an unranked South Carolina team, and South Carolina hasn't been that good, as they're 3-4, and they've lost 4 of their last 5. And this should be a fairly easy game for Alabama. The offense for Alabama, they've been playing well, scoring over 35 points a game, but they do face a pretty solid South Carolina defense, allowing about 20 per game. But then on the flip side, the Alabama defense also playing well, as they're allowing just 17 points per game, and the South Carolina offense is non-existent, scoring about 20 points per game. But this game should be a pretty easy win for Alabama. I think they dominate on both sides of the ball and win this game 37-7. But this could also be one of those games for Alabama where they do lose or play a very close game against an unranked team where they should probably win this game pretty easily. But I don't really think that happens considering how well Alabama's been playing, but it's definitely a possibility. Up next, we have Missouri at Vanderbilt. This is a pretty interesting game. Vanderbilt, they're 6-1 and they've been playing well, and they're actually ranked inside the top 10 in the AP poll for the first time in 78 years. And then they'll face a Missouri team that's also 6-1, although last week they weren't great, barely beating Auburn, winning 23-17 in overtime. But I think this game should be pretty good. And both these teams are also pretty similar. They both run a strong run game and a good defense. As the offense for Missouri, they're scoring 39 points per game and rushing for 244 yards per game. The defense for Vanderbilt, they're allowing 20 points per game, and they're great stopping the run, allowing under 100 rushing yards per game and just 3.4 yards per carry. And then on the flip side, the Vanderbilt offense scoring 41.4 points a game and rushing for 213 per game. But they face a Missouri defense giving up 16.7 points a game and just 83 rushing yards per game. But this is a game that is a really interesting matchup, and a game I can definitely see going either way. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game as both these teams are great defensively, and I think this game could come down to the quarterback position and who can protect the football. For Missouri, Bo Prabula has played well as he's at 16 total touchdowns, although he has thrown an interception in 5 straight games, and he's actually thrown 4 picks in his last 2 games. And then for Vanderbilt, Diego Pavi, he's been great as he has 19 total touchdowns and he's turned it over just 4 times. Plus Diego Pavi, he seems to make a big play whenever Vanderbilt needs it. So I'm going to take Vanderbilt to get the win here. I just trust Diego Pavi and this offense a little bit more. Plus Vanderbilt's at home, and I'm going to take Vanderbilt to win a close, low-scoring game and get another big win. And I've got Vanderbilt with the win, 23-17. Up next, we have BYU at Iowa State. This is another pretty good game. BYU is still undefeated as they're 7-0 after their big win over Utah, and Iowa State is 5-2, and they're coming off a bye, although they have lost back-to-back games. But I think this game should be pretty good, and we have a pretty good matchup in this game. The offense for BYU is very balanced, scoring 35.6 points per game, and they have over 200 passing yards per game and 200 rushing yards per game. And true freshman quarterback Bear Bachmeier has also been great, with 17 total touchdowns and just 3 turnovers so far this year. But the offense for BYU, they face a good Iowa State defense, allowing 19 points per game, although they aren't great against the run, allowing 141 rushing yards per game, and that definitely isn't a great matchup against this BYU offense. And then on the flip side, the Iowa State offense is also pretty solid, scoring roughly 30 points per game, but they face a good BYU defense, giving up 15.6 points per game. Although BYU has struggled to stop the run recently, allowing an average of 195 rushing yards per game over their last 2 games. But this is another tough game to predict, and I can definitely see this game going either way. BYU, they've been really good so far this year, and they're a very complete team, but they're in a very tough spot here. Coming off an emotional win over Utah, they have to go on the road against an Iowa State team coming off a bye, and I think it's going to be tough here for BYU. They've got a lot working against them, and because of that, I'm going to take Iowa State, but this game can definitely go either way. But I'm going to take Iowa State to get the upset 24-21. Moving on, we have Illinois at Washington. This is another pretty good game, and both these teams are very solid, sitting at 5-2. And both these teams also coming off a loss in their most recent game. As Illinois, they lost to Ohio State 2 weeks ago and are coming off a bye, and Washington lost to Michigan last week. This game should be pretty entertaining. The offense for Illinois is scoring 34 points per game, and they've been good throwing the football, as they're averaging 264 passing yards per game. And they face a Washington defense that is pretty solid, allowing 20.3 points per game, and they're good against the run, although they could be a lot better against the pass, giving up 235 passing yards per game. And then on the offensive side for Washington, they're also good, scoring also 34 points a game, although they're a little bit more balanced with a great run game and pass game. Although the offense for Washington has been a little bit inconsistent so far this season. And they face an Illinois defense that really isn't that great, allowing 25 points per game, and they're nothing special against both the pass or the run. So I'm going to take Washington to get the win here. I just think they're the better overall team. I like their offense a little bit more, and I've got them with the win 34-27, but this game can definitely go their way. Up next, we have Texas Tech hosting Oklahoma State. So Texas Tech, they're looking to bounce back after they lost their first game of the season last week in their loss to Arizona State, and they have a great opportunity to get that bounce back win as they face a terrible Oklahoma State team. And I don't really think this game is that close. The offense for Texas Tech is one of the highest scoring offenses in the country, scoring 44 points per game. Although the offense for Texas Tech, they didn't have Baron Morton last week and they weren't great, and they're likely going to be starting backup quarterback Will Hammond once again. Although Hammond was pretty good in the fourth quarter, and I definitely think he can build on that this week, especially facing an Oklahoma State defense that can't stop anyone, allowing 38 points per game. And then on the other side, the Oklahoma State offense only scoring 16 points a game, Texas Tech only allowing 14 per game. But I don't think this game is close. I don't think this game matters. The Texas Tech playing with their backup quarterback. I've got Texas Tech winning very easily, 49-3. Moving on, we have Baylor at Cincinnati. This is another good game. Another game I think is going to be pretty entertaining because both these teams very good offensively. For Baylor, they're scoring 36.3 points per game, and they're led by a great pass game. Quarterback Sawyer Robertson actually leads the country in yards and touchdowns with 2,376 passing yards and 21 passing touchdowns. But the Baylor offense, they face a Cincinnati defense that's pretty solid, allowing 18.9 points per game, although they're not the greatest against the pass, allowing over 240 passing yards per game. Then on the flip side, Cincinnati's offense is also good, scoring 38 points a game, and they've been a little bit more balanced than Baylor, but they're also led by a great quarterback, as Brandon Sorsby, he's been great, with 24 total touchdowns and just 1 interception this season. But they face a bad Baylor defense that has not been good, allowing 31.4 points per game. But this is another game that can definitely go either way, and I think this is going to be an entertaining game, and we're going to see a lot of points scored. But I'm going to go with Cincinnati to get the win. They're at home, and I just think the difference on the defensive side of the ball is too much for Baylor to overcome. So I'm going to go with Cincinnati to get the win in a high-scoring game, 38-28. Next game, we have Texas at Mississippi State. This game could be pretty interesting. Mississippi State is 4-3, and they have lost 3 games in a row, but they're still a pretty solid team. And Texas, they're 5-2, although they were not good last week, needing overtime to beat a Kentucky team that's not very good. But there's definitely potential for an upset here, especially because the Texas offense just is not good, as they're only scoring 26.7 points per game, and they get another pretty tough defense, as Mississippi State's defense allowing about 20 points per game. And on the flip side, the Mississippi State offense isn't elite, but they're solid, scoring 31 points a game, although the Texas defense one of the best in the country, allowing just 11 points per game. But this is going to be a low-scoring game. Both these teams are pretty good defensively, and I can definitely see Mississippi State getting the win because I don't really think their offense is going to have to do a whole ton. But I'm going to take Texas. While I don't trust their offense at all, I think their defense is good enough for them to win this game. I've got Texas in a low-scoring game, 20-14, but I wouldn't be shocked to see the upset. Up next, we have Oregon at Wisconsin. So this game's not going to be close. Oregon, they're great as they're 6-1, and Wisconsin is terrible as they're 2-5. And a big reason Wisconsin's so bad is their offense. As they're not good, they're third worst in the country, scoring just 13 points per game, plus they've been shut out in back-to-back weeks. And on top of the offensive struggles for Wisconsin, they don't have to face a great Oregon defense. And then on the flip side, the Oregon offense is great, and they had 750 total yards last week in their win over Rutgers. And the Wisconsin defense isn't terrible, but they're not great either, as they're allowing 24 points per game. But there's only so much the defense can do here for Wisconsin. This game's not going to be close. I've got Oregon winning very easily, 42-3. Up next, we have Stanford at Miami. Miami, they're looking for a bounce-back win after they lost their first game of the season last week in their loss to Louisville, and then they'll face a Stanford team that isn't very good, although they did beat Florida State last week. But the offense for Miami was a big reason why they lost last week, as Carson Beck threw 4 interceptions. but I think Beck on the offense will be a lot better this week because the Stanford defense is not good, allowing 28 points per rim, and they also can't stop the pass, allowing over 300 passing yards per rim. Plus, the Stanford defense has only gotten one interception all year, so I don't think Miami's got to worry about Carson Beck throwing another 4 picks. Then on the flip side, the offense for Stanford is also terrible, as they've been held to under 20 points per game this season. And the Miami defense, they're also pretty good. Now, I guess it's possible for Miami to lose again, but I don't really see it happening. I think Miami bounces back in a big way, and they destroy Stanford because Stanford is not good, and I've got Miami 48-7. Up next, we have LSU hosting Texas A&M. This is another big game. A&M is 7-0, and they're playing well, but they don't have to go to LSU, who's 5-2, although LSU did lose last week in their loss to Vanderbilt. But this is a pretty interesting game. The offense for Texas A&M, they've been playing well, scoring 36 points per game, and they've been great throwing the ball and running the ball. But they now face a great LSU defense that's allowing just 14.6 points per game, and they're good against both the pass and the run. Although LSU is going to be without one of their better defensive players in linebacker Whit Weeks, who's out for the second straight week. And then on the flip side, the offense for LSU, they're not good. They're scoring 25.9 points per game, they have no run game, and their pass game is nothing too impressive. And then they'll face a Texas A&M defense that's playing pretty well, allowing 23.4 points per game, although last week they didn't play that well, allowing 42 against Arkansas. But this is a game where there's definitely potential for an upset because A&M has to go to LSU, which is never easy. But it's a big game for Brian Kelly. We all know he doesn't like to win those. And I'm going to go with Texas A&M. And I just don't think this LSU offense is good enough to win this game. Defense can only do so much, and I've got Texas A&M with the win by a score of 26-16. Up next, we have Michigan at Michigan State. So Michigan's coming in off a nice win over Washington, winning 24-7, and they'll face a Michigan State team that's not great, as they're 3-4 and winless in conference play. But the offense for Michigan, they're solid. They're scoring 28.7 points per game, and they run the ball effectively with an average of 212 rushing yards per game. And they get a pretty good matchup this week against a Michigan State defense that's not great, allowing over 32 points per game, plus they're not great at stopping the run. Then on the flip side, it's also pretty one-sided. Michigan State's offense not great, with just about 27 points per game, and they've been held to 13 in back-to-back weeks. And they face a good Michigan defense, allowing just 17 points per game. But this is a game that I guess can go either way because it's a rivalry game and anything can happen in those, but I don't really think this game is that close. Michigan are the clear better overall team. I've got Michigan with the win 31-7. Up next, we have Boston College at Louisville. Louisville's coming off a huge upset win over Miami, and they need to avoid a letdown game, but I think they should be able to because Boston College has just one win all year. But this is another game I don't think is going to be very close. Offense for Louisville, they're great. They're averaging 34 points per game and over 280 passing yards per game. And the BC defense is not good, allowing 34 points per game and over 250 passing yards per game. And in offense for Boston College, they don't have the offense to keep up, as they're only scoring 27 points per game, and the Louisville defense is pretty solid. So I think Louisville wins this game pretty easily. Even if they get off to a slow start, I still think they win this game fairly convincingly. They're a clear better overall team. They're at home. Boston College just isn't good. I've got Louisville with the win 37-14. Next game, we have Tennessee at Kentucky. So both these teams here are coming off a loss. As Tennessee, they got destroyed by Alabama, and Kentucky lost a close win to Texas. But this is another game that's probably going to be a blowout. The offense for Tennessee is great, putting up 44 points a game, and they face a not good Kentucky defense, allowing about 26 points per game. And the offense for Kentucky also not very good, as they're scoring just 22 points per game, although the Tennessee defense will allow some points. So I just don't think Kentucky's got the offense to keep pace with Tennessee here. I think Tennessee ends up winning this game pretty easily, 41-23. And our final game, we've got Houston at Arizona State. This is a quietly good game. Houston is 6-1, and they're playing fairly well. And Arizona State is 5-2, and coming off a big upset win over Texas Tech. And in last week's game for Arizona State, they were really helped out by the return of quarterback Sam Leavitt, and he played pretty well, and he leads an offense scoring 26 points per game. Although the offense for Arizona State will be without their best offensive player and receiver Jordan Tyson, and that is definitely going to be a big loss. And the Arizona State offense, they already faced a pretty good defense, as Houston is allowing 20 points per game, although they also haven't really played many great offenses. And then on the offensive side for Houston, they're putting up 29.4 points per game, and Arizona State allowing 24 points per game. But this is a pretty interesting game here because when you look at the numbers, I would definitely give the advantage to Houston, but I'm going to take Arizona State. I just think they're the better overall team. They're at home, and Houston, they also haven't really played very good teams. So I'm going to take Arizona State to get the win in a close game, 27-23, with the upset definitely a possibility. But those are my Week 9 college football predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications. I'll do my best to post as often as possible. Be sure to check out the community tab of my channel, where you guys can vote on who you think will win some of this big games. But that's all for this video. I'll do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.